Okay, today is Monday, February 25th. Welcome back after a long week off. We're going to start. We don't have any time to ease into it. We got to jump right back in to where we left off, which was Module 4, Lesson 13. And today is all about using pictures to help you multiply a unit fraction by another unit fraction. Some of you might be thinking, wait, but I don't even know what a unit fraction is. Don't worry. I'll help you with that in just a second, okay? Please, right now, in your notebooks, point to where you wrote down the lesson today. Point to where you wrote the learning goal. Go back to where you wrote down the lesson. Oh, if you didn't write it, please write it down. It's important every single day that you write down the lesson and the learning goal. It's been a while since we've gone over our math routines, and some of you have gotten really lazy about it. Make sure you do that so that when you go back and look at your math notes, you know exactly what lesson was what. Okay, that'll really help you as you're studying. Here's the situation, guys. Jan has 4 pans of Rice Krispie Treats. So she was busy baking over the weekend, and she made 4 pans of Rice Krispie Treats. She's going to send half of those pans to school with her children. How many pans of Rice Krispie Treats does Jan send to school? Well, in order to figure that out, we'd have to find out what half of 4 pans is, right? Because we know that she's sending half of her pans to school, and altogether she made 4. So it's half of 4 pans. Do you agree? We know in math that's the same as multiplication, right? The word of really means multiplication. So that's 1/2 times 4, which would be 1 times 4 all over 2, which is 4 over 2, or 2 pans. Do you agree? One way to draw a picture is that she has 4 pans, 1, 2, 3, 4 pans altogether, and we're going to divide them into 2 groups. So what she would send to school would be 2 pans. Do you agree? Right now in your notebooks, I want you to write the stuff I wrote down. Half of 4 pans, and then the math equation, and then the drawing. Go. Now, Jan has 2 pans of Rice Krispie Treats. She's going to send half of those pans to school with her children. How many pans of Rice Krispie Treats does Jan send to school? Well, this time we have half of how many? 2. So this time we're finding 1/2 of 2. How can I write that as a math equation? Lydia? 1/2 times 2, because we know the word of just means multiply. So 1/2 of 2 is the same thing as 1/2 times 2. We know that. If I want to write that as one fraction, I would write it as 1 times 2 all over 2, which is 2 over 2, which is 1. So we know half of 2, we already knew that too, is 1 pan. So we know that Jan's going to send 1 pan to school with her children. But what if I want to use pictures? Because today's math goal says I can use pictures. Well, I'm going to draw 2 pans. Here's 1 pan. Here's another pan. I'm going to split them into 2 equal groups and show that 1 pan is going to school. Go ahead and make sure you have your math and your pictures all drawn. Now, Jan has 1 pan of Rice Krispie Treats. She's going to send half of that pan to school with her children. How much of her pan will she send altogether? Well, this time we're finding half of 1. So as a math sentence, we know that's 1/2 times 1, which is 1 times 1 all over 2, which is 1 over 2. So what's half of 1? 1/2 of a pan. That's how much she's sending to school. If I want to use pictures, this time I only have 1 pan, and I have to split it in half, and this right here is the part that she's bringing to school. So half of 1 is 1/2. Here it is using words, here it is using numbers, and here it is using pictures. What part are we focused on today? The pictures, because if we look at our learning goal, it says I can use pictures. Now, are we multiplying things? Yes. Yeah, we're multiplying a fraction by a whole number. But today we know we need to multiply a unit fraction by a unit fraction. So have we achieved our learning goal yet? No. This time, Jan has only half a pan of Rice Krispie Treats. She's still going to send half of it to school with her children. We want to find out how much she's sending to her school with her children. So this time, we know that she has a half pan that she's starting with, and she's still sending half of it to school. So we're doing half of 1/2. Well, go ahead and draw a whole pan. I'm going to make this drawing go away. Okay. This time she has 1. Does she have a whole pan of Rice Krispie Treats? No, she only has how much? 1/2. So go ahead and shade in half of a pan. Now, when we draw math drawings, it's not good enough just to draw it. In order for us to be really precise, what do we always have to do? we have to label. So let's label that she has here half a pan. Go ahead and do that. Now, is she sending the entire half pan to school? No, she's only sending half of that. So what I have to do is I have to split this into half again. Now, I want you to notice, and over here, we split it into half. And then shade in the part that you split there. Okay? Now, I want you to notice I split the whole pan this way, even though this pan was empty. That part of the pan was empty. The reason for that is I want to see how many pieces I have all together now. How many, if you look at my entire pan, how many pieces are there? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces all together. That means out of 4 pieces, how much is she actually bringing? How much is shaded in double with black and blue? 1. Only this one part has black and blue. So all together, she's bringing 1/4. So 1/2 of 1/2, going back to our original up here, is 1/4 of the pan. How could I write that as numbers? Now we have words, we have pictures. How do I write this using numbers? Maddie? 1/2 times 1/2. You got it. 1/2 times 1/2. Now what if I want to write that as one fraction? I can write the numerators, 1 times 1, all over the denominators, 2 times 2. So what's 1 times 1?
1.
What's 2 times 2?
4.
So again, you can see we get the same answer using words, pictures, and numbers. What part are we really focusing on today? The pictures. Okay. But looking at the numbers, this time we multiplied 1/2 by 1/2. Is that a fraction times a fraction? Okay, we're making our way towards our learning goal. This time, Jan has 1/3 of a pan of Rice Krispie treats, and she's sending 1/2 of those treats to school with her children. We want to find out what fraction of a pan of treats does she send to school. So this time, she's sending half of her pan, right? Half of what she has. But what does she have? 1/3. So we're finding 1/2 of 1/3. Are we going to jump right to numbers? No. What are we focused on today? Pictures. So let's draw what she has. Here's one whole pan. Does Jan have one whole pan of brownies? How much does she have? 1/3. Does she have 1/2 or 1/3? That's a very easy, very normal, very common 5th grade mistake to make. I see my first fraction is 1/2. Does that mean that Jan has 1/2 of a pan of brownies? No. Look back at the problem. How much brownies does she have? 1/3 of a pan. So let's go ahead and split her whole pan into thirds and shade in one of those thirds because that's what she has, right? Is it good enough just to draw and shade? What else do we have to do? Label. So down here, draw your little brackets and show that she has 1/3 of a pan of brownies. Now, is she bringing that whole third to school? No. She's bringing what fraction of the 1/3? 1/2. So originally we showed that she had 1/3 in black, but she's only going to bring half of it. So split that whole thing in half and shade in half of that third. Label, how much of the third did we shade in? What fraction of the third did we shade in, everyone?
1/2.
1/2. So let's label 1/2. You'll see I split the pan into 2 parts that way and 3 parts going up and down. Now, all together, how many pieces are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means all together, I have 6 pieces. I've split now. Remember, our denominators always are type of units. Have I split this pan into sixths? So that's why my denominator is 6. How many of those pieces are doubly shaded in? 1. So 1 out of the 6 of the pieces will be going to school. So what fraction of the pan is going to school? 1/6 of the pan. Okay, very good. If I were using numbers, how could I write 1/2 of 1/3 using numbers? Luke? 1/2 times 1/3. So what we're doing here is we're multiplying 1/2 times 1/3, and our answer is 1/6. We're not even going to worry about how the numbers work quite yet. So let's go back to our learning goal that you wrote down. Point to where you put your learning goal again. Very nice. I can use pictures to multiply unit fractions by unit fractions. We've done it now. The last three problems, I think, you helped Jan use pictures to multiply unit fractions by unit fractions. So my question for you then is go back and look at the last three problems we did. 1/2 times 1/2, 1/2 times 1/3, 1/4 times 1/3, and tell me, talk with your table group, what is a unit fraction? I heard some really good conversations. These were the three problems. Tell me if I'm right. Did we first do 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4? Yeah. Point in your notebook where you drew that picture. Then we did 1/2 times 1/3 equals 1/6, yes? Yeah. Point to in your notebook where you drew that picture. And then most recently we did 1/4 times 1/3, yes? Equals 1/12. Okay, good. So what do all these fractions have in common? What do all these fractions, don't worry about the products really, but what do all the factors have in common? Tarun? The numerators are always 1. So a unit fraction is a fraction where the numerator is 1. But why? Well, what do you know about denominators? When you look at just the fraction 1/2, what are the units? Halves, right? When you look at the fraction 1/4, what are the units? Fourths, because I've split it into fourths, right? When you look at the fraction 1/12, what is the units? Twelfths. So if I have 1 in the numerator, how many of those size units do I have? 1 unit. I have 1/2. Here I have 1/3. So a unit fraction is any fraction that has a 1 in its numerator. So today, if our goal is to multiply a unit fraction by a unit fraction, that means that we should be able to use pictures to multiply anything, right, by 1 over anything to get the answer. Does that make sense? I want you to remember, what strategy are we really focusing on using today? Pictures. But Miss O, in my after-school Kumon class, when I do 8th grade math, I can do it with numbers. Is that nice? That's nice. What are we using today? Pictures. But Miss O, I don't know how to use pictures. Is that true? Point right now in your notebook where you prove that you do know how to use pictures. Very good.